Let me ask you something. Have you ever witnessed a perfect storm? A storm where you have high winds moving on a warm front mixed with a lot of precipitation. And voila, you've got a hurricane. There's nothing special about a hurricane. What makes a perfect storm are rare conditions converging all at once. So, for example, when you've got a hurricane that follows a tropical storm headed to an area that isn't prepared, okay? The ground is saturated, the infrastructure is poor, and here comes a storm. It hits, wipes out everything, devastation. What would that look like for a college football team? How about a team that rarely overachieves? What about opponents who consistently play their best football against a common opponent that continues to win those games? How about coaching jobs on the line before playing said team? Or college football playoff implications on the line before playing said team? The Texas A&M goes to Missouri this Saturday. Are the conditions right? Is a storm building? Is a swell inevitable? What's at stake here? Welcome to the Aggiecentral podcast. I'm your host, Central. I do not ask for subs. I don't care how many I've got. I don't ask for them. I'm not at 1.2 trying to get to 2,000 or whatever it may be. I don't even keep track of that. I have no idea what it's at. If you want to help out the channel, like, share, comment. See something you like, do all the above. Great. So, what's at stake? Let's talk Missouri. For Missouri, everything. A loss would fully boot them from the SEC championship game. I feel like it probably already has, but they still feel like it's on the line at some level. They got their backs up against the wall. They're down at QB. It would also eliminate them from the playoff consideration. They are 6-2, so the playoffs are still a part of it, albeit maybe it looks bleak based off of what they've got left on the schedule. However, a win versus an A&M team that's number 3, things start to perk up. Okay? So a number 22 team with a third loss just can't survive that. With so few ways to make progress late in the season, it's not going to happen. Their backs are up against the wall. So just like many weeks before, A&M will face an opponent who has their back against the wall, a team that will give A&M their best shot. This is not being said enough. People do not understand this situation, but I am going to lay it all out. For A&M, nothing is at stake and everything. Elko has this team playing for their life every week. They aren't perfect. He reminds them constantly. They are 8-0, and they are in the SEC championship game hunt. They are in the college football playoff hunt. And what have they done? Nothing. Okay? Nothing. And they must understand this. They have done nothing. Elko has taught this team that they have done nothing more than get their name, or I should say, any more than getting their name on a graphic that places them third by the playoff committee. They are tops in the SEC standings. Nothing. They're talked about as title contenders. Nothing. And they have a number by their name. It says number 3. It's nothing. The goal was not to be on a graphic or a record. So what's at stake this week? Nothing. Because this win isn't the goal. The goal is a championship. It's domination. The goal is to beat ourselves. They've done none of this. They've done nothing. They will have done something when they win a championship, okay? The SEC or otherwise, but can that happen without a win versus Missouri? Can they win a SEC championship game? It's possible if they lose. A natty, maybe. Beat their self? No. If they lose, they don't beat their self. You heard that right. And this is so much deeper than X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes, y'all. We are venturing into transcendent territory. I'll explain. Because you heard that right. If we want to beat Missouri, we have to beat ourselves first. Okay? And that's the key. But first, I want to take a look at Missouri, and then I'll explain all that to you because these last 4 games of the season are a big deal. A little sneak preview. The first 8 games of the year are about finding out who we are. The last 4 games are about finding out what we are made of. And that's why it's important to understand what we have to beat before we can win these games. So, Missouri, they are 14th in total offense. They were number one. There was a time when they were number one. The first 5 games of the year for Missouri, 560 total yards in the first game. Then 595, 606. Man, these are some numbers. 456, 521. The opponents, Central Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, South Carolina, and Massachusetts. They averaged 547 yards in their first 5 games. 547 yards of offense. The last 3 games, 325, 343, 376 against Bama, Auburn, and Vandy. Okay, and we know Auburn's got an elite D. That is not my take. That's pretty much everybody's take. That's an average of 348 yards per game. Almost, almost a 200-yard per game drop off in the last 3 games. What I like to do at this time of year is not just go off of the X's and the O's. Okay, you got 8 games. 8 games give you this real big wide picture. But we're getting in that territory where you have momentum, you have swings, teams are changing, or they're moving, or they're gaining momentum, or they're dying. Right now, based off of this, it looks like Vandy is starting to slow down. Okay? So I'm looking at trends at this point. So I'm going back 3 games. Right now, Vandy, last 3 games, and it might be because you finally got into some deeper conference opponents other than South Carolina. It's just not quite going the same way it was going for the first 5 games. Okay, and that's not any more obvious than looking at the quarterback situation. Zollers is going to take over for Pribula. Man, I struggled with that name throughout the year. Pribula just doesn't want to come out right. But uh, he's had about 1 game of work where he went 14 of 23 for 138 yards, 60% completions, a TD, and the 17-10 loss versus Vandy. Okay, so he's a freshman. He's green. He might be better. Well, they might be better off with Zollers rather than Pavula. It's kind of a six this way, half a dozen the other. I think they're going to end up liking this guy. I just don't know when they're going to like him. I mean, he is an arm. He's got nice touch. He can make every throw. I don't want to go as far as to say he doesn't have the legs. I'm just not sure he's going to use them. I think that would definitely give us an advantage. He's technically their third string quarterback at this point. So I don't see a lot of running in his future. He's kind of got a makeup at this point. I would kind of compare pretty close to Nussmeier. He's like I said, he's got the arm. I don't see him using the legs. He definitely can run much better than Nussmeier though. So if he has to, I'm sure he will. I don't know what they're going to want to do with him because uh, where they're at with their QB spot. If they want to run the ball, my thought is they might as well just do it with Ahmad Hardy. I mean, they technically have the best running back in the SEC in Ahmad Hardy. Okay. But I'm not going to make any bones about this, y'all. I'm not pulling shots tonight. I feel some type of way about this particular game, about the particular situation where we're at. I've already listened to some podcasts, and I'm already hearing, you know what? Hey, not upset alert. What was the term that was used today on the one that I listened to? It wasn't upset alert. Um, it was. It'll come back to me, and I'll share it. But it was exactly something like that. I'm like, look. This team has been like this since we beat Notre Dame. So the fact that we are here doing this whole thing again is just, I don't know. Here, so I feel some type of way. So I'm not going to make any bones about this. This is going to be a little bit of a referendum on Mizzou's offense on Ahmad Hardy. And here's why. He leads the conference and the nation at one point in rushing yards. He's got 937 yards this year. That's a lot. That's a lot. a 5.9 yard per carry kind of guy, 11 TDs, and mostly, and maybe most impressive is zero fumbles on the year. Zero fumbles. He's a hard runner. He's got great vision. I think he's actually a reasonable comparison to Moss. Okay, yeah, and you know how Moss runs. It's pretty patient. He's really good at finding the hole, and he always falls forward. That is Ahmad Hardy to a T. All right. Here's the last 5 games from our first 5 games, excuse me, for Ahmad Hardy. 100 versus Central Arkansas, 112 versus Kansas, 250 versus Louisiana, 138 versus SC, 130 versus UMass. But then the last 3 games, 52 versus Bama, 58 versus Auburn, 97 versus Vandy. A little bit of a bounce back there. So last 3 games, 4.3 yards per carry, 2.4 and 4.9 respectively. Not the same numbers this guy was putting up in the first 5 games. Okay. So I'm just flashing that out there. Okay. You could make a good case that A&M does not have the same run defense that a team like Auburn does, or maybe even Bama. I think at times it's been that way, and it may be a bit of a crapshoot on whether or not we're going to get that particular run defense out of this unit for this game or not. I think it's a pretty good chance that we do. I really do. I think if you've got a freshman quarterback back there, you're probably going to want to load the box and make him beat you. I think that's precisely what Elko would do with a team like what we've got. I think we've done really well with leaning on our cornerbacks at times on Des Ricks and Will Lee, and I think this game sets up really well for us to do exactly the same thing there. Lean on them like we did against Florida. Maybe they're going to make a few plays over the top, a few early plays here and there. I definitely think something like that's liable to happen. I think Zollers is an unknown since we have very, very, very limited film on this guy. I look for Elko to kind of come out in just a little bit of a pat defense to start off with. Fill them out, see what they're going to do. So I think Drink's probably going to have a nice plan. I think he's a creative guy. I think he'll have some things and some wrinkles that we're not really going to be quite prepared for. And I think it's going to catch us just a little bit early. I'm curious to see how well we can weather that storm early on, since that's the theme of the pod for tonight, right? How well we can weather that. Are we going to give up 14 quick points? Are we going to be able to hold them to just a field goal, inside the 10, something like that, and then get our feet underneath us? Because you know, with not a lot on Zollers, it's not real clear what it is that we're going to need to do against this guy. But they should fall back into their same relative scheme that they've done most all year at some point, regardless of what wrinkles that they end up putting in there. So once that happens, then we'll see kind of where things go. I think there's going to be a little bit of a slow start from us coming off of a bye week, new quarterback, not playing maybe our standard defense that we're used to, and something that we're in like zone on a regular basis that I don't think we run well anyways. I think we're going to give a few early yards, maybe a couple touchdowns. We'll see on that. We'll see how well this team kind of gets in gear. Um, Tackling will be key from A&M. Ahmad Hardy, difficult guy to tackle. Zollers, where he's not a huge runner, he's still got good legs, and so he can be elusive. How will their line hold up versus our D line is going to be a question that we're going to have to address coming up as well when we're looking at matchups, since we're talking about those. But can their wide receivers also get a few explosives? We saw some early explosives when we played Florida. That helped out quite a bit. Same thing from LSU. But once things settled down, those all went away. We leaned on our cornerbacks. They came through. We rotated them in. They stayed fresh, which I think had a lot to do with that. So I think that would probably be the game plan from us. But the tackling, being our gaps at the linebacker position, pinning our ears back on those predictable downs, big deal right there. Okay. I think they need to play turnover free ball if they want to keep up. That's what I think. I think they need to play turnover free ball. Um, there'll be a lot of people that are probably going to tell you that's not the case. So I was listening to a matchup battle earlier today. And in that matchup battle, Missouri won running back, not wide receivers, but the offensive line, and I think A&M won all three on the offensive side of things. I was like, okay, all right, that sounds about right. I'll give you that. I'm not real happy about the running back situation that you just gave us, but Ahmad Hardy deserves some respect. But I've looked at these numbers and I'm not quite there yet. So that's why I'm kind of feeling some type of way about this. I feel like we probably should have won all four even without Moss. Maybe that's my maroon sunglasses going on at this point, and maybe I'm in my feels a little bit too much. All right, fine. I'll pump the brakes on that. But I think, like I said, we may get gashed a little bit um, early on the ground, through the air, before we get our feet underneath us. A&M is the 41st, uh, uh, say, best or worst. We're ranked 41st in explosive plays allowed, and then we're 96th or 96% of the drives. We're 96% in the red zone. Not a great number, y'all. So there's going to be a few opportunities there if Missouri can take advantage of them. The question is, will they be able to take advantage of them on the offensive side of things? And I've got some thoughts. I just don't feel like our defense is being talked about enough. I really don't. There's a couple of players here and there that people want to talk about. Cassius Howell. But more than that, talking about Missouri's defense over and over and over again. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, well, you see what happened the last few games, right? And they held up well against Bama, Auburn, and Vandy. They really did. So the defense is definitely good. The defense is definitely good. But that offense, that offense was something different. Okay? That offense was something different. So, you know, um, let me switch sides real quick, okay? Before I get a little too fired up about this situation. But switching sides, Missouri is fifth in total D. Solid number. It is a solid number. I think it is warranted. I think they do have a solid defense. But I want to give you the full picture. I want to let you know how they're playing right now, not how they were playing in game one, or game two, or game three, where they played most recently. So here, first 5 games, yards per game, 227. 254, 121, 121 yards allowed, 293, and then 124. Those hundreds are just things you don't hardly ever see. I mean, that's nothing short of amazing. Remember, Central Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, South Carolina, and Massachusetts. All right. The biggest number that they gave up in that 5 game stretch was to a conference opponent, South Carolina, 293. Still not an impressive number by South Carolina, but nonetheless, you can see the uptick that's taking place whenever they have a conference opponent ahead of them. That was an average of 203. So keep that in mind. Last 3 games, most recent 3 games, yards per game, 325, 357, 265. That was against Bama, Auburn, and Vandy. Okay. So that's an average of 315. So they're giving up well over 100 yards additional offense when they're playing what I would say is a quality opponent. Okay. So what would that D be if they had actually been playing this the full way? Okay. Of course, everybody benefits from having these cupcake games, uh, playing some of these lesser quality teams. We're all benefiting from it at some point. Um, but certain teams are performing well at the right time. Some teams are not. Right now, what I would argue is that um, Missouri's starting to trend slightly down. I'm not saying it's a cliff. They might just be holding pat, perhaps, but it's not skyrocketing. You don't really see like a whole lot of growth going on. Okay, but I will add a caveat to that because if there is one area that they would do this, is it's going to be from the defensive end situation. They've got Zion Young, they've got Damian Wilson, they've got 11 and a half sacks combined together. So these are definitely two guys to watch out. They're going to pose, I would say, a fairly significant problem, one that A&M hasn't quite seen this year. Um, so as a team, though, they racked up 4 sacks versus Bama, 5 versus Auburn, and then 2 versus Vandy most recently. Um, Interesting numbers considering, okay? But maybe it makes sense. I mean, five from Auburn, you've got that offense that's just not good. You've got Jackson Arnold holding the ball, and we feasted on him as well. It does make some sense. I thought maybe they would have had a little bit more against Vandy, but hey, Vandy's been doing well this year. Can they get to Marcel Reed? How will our tackles hold up versus this duo? Um, like I said, this is definitely the best tandem that we've seen all year. It's going to create an added layer of difficulty. We haven't faced a group uh, this good across the board like Missouri is on the D line all year. Okay. The closest thing I would say is probably, I mean, it's probably got to be Auburn. Auburn's probably got the best quality defense we've seen, especially on the defensive line. Maybe Florida. Um, they were pretty good there for a while, for a time. We just wore them out. Can we do that same thing to Missouri? Maybe so. Maybe so. So uh, I really think that matchup is going to be a one to watch. I haven't heard Zoom's name called much this year, uh, nor Crownover, which that might be a good thing. But they are definitely going to get tested this week. Hopefully, Colin Klein's got a very significant, um, well planned game plan ready to deal with this tandem, whatever that may be. I don't really know what I could say prescribed for that, but I think that their defense definitely offers a few let's call them wrinkles. Just there's some areas I think that we can exploit. One of them is middle linebacker, and you got Trotter, who's pretty fantastic linebacker, and he's really good in run defense. When it comes to coverage, it's just not quite there. He doesn't move real well laterally, so especially when you get into some of the zone schemes and him needing to go back and forth and be aware of what receivers coming across and who he's got to get. I don't think it's there. You know, if we're going to do something here on, let's say, for instance, going back to our defense real quick, what's the game plan? The game plan probably what makes the most sense is most obvious is to load the box and make the quarterback beat us, right? Well, um, it's going to be more difficult against Missouri's defense for sure because they are more they're much well rounded than their offense. But it seems like their strength is probably the running game. So I don't know that I would prescribe just trying to run it down their throat when that's Trotter's strength in the first place. The defensive ends actually hold up quite well against the run. Um, I saw some stat where they were slightly better than us, or significantly better than run defense, and we were slightly better than them in pressures. So just take that for what it is at this point. Maybe this is one where we go pass heavy. We lean on Craver, we lean on KC. I'd like to actually see the tight ends and running backs out of the backfield worked in quite a bit into the center of the field. I think the center of the field is the place to go against these linebackers. Okay, that's just my thought. I am, what is this Wednesday night quarterbacking this? So giving you a thought. I'm no expert by any means, but that running back out of the backfield, I think is a real problem. Um, I don't know if they can also adequately deal with Marcel. We saw the QB run really rear its head this last week. Not that it was planned and designed, but when he had to get down there and run, he really let loose this last week, 2 weeks ago against LSU. So I think if we see a lot of zone from Missouri, we're going to really just kind of work them pretty good. It seems to they have a lot that gets lost in translation when they're in that kind of situation. Um, I think they're probably just like us. They're probably better in man, but if we can get them in those zone situations, a person like KC who knows exactly what he's doing, knows how to sit down in all those spaces that are made available. Marcel's playing about as good as he has. I think it offers a really good opportunity for us to a uh, make a lot of just intermediate to medium route yardage completions. So I want to toss this in there though. I've been wondering if this might come into play at some point. Um, and I don't know if it ever will, but I wonder if this actually might be the game. But keep a lookout for the old 2012 Colin Klein style QB run. I haven't quite seen that this year. It's kind of like the sort of RPO to the running back, but then you follow him into the hole. Everything is really slow developing, and it's just a really pounding kind of situation. Move the line to the left a little bit, move the line to the right a little bit, find the hole, and then just push it forward for 5 or 6 yards. And that was something that Bill Snyder just really had down to a T. And I'm wondering if that's the wrinkle we're going to see here this game. Maybe we flash that just a little bit, um, but maybe not. If I had to go with something, I'd really like to see our running backs coming out of the backfield matching up on their linebackers and watch that matchup. I think that's probably the bigger one to work on. So that's my prescription at this point. But now, after you kind of know who Missouri is, I want to get into the intangibles. I want to talk about, I think, what's got my blood boiling more so than anything. Okay. So we're talking about this kind of being a bit of a perfect storm. Okay. And I mentioned about what the situations were when we were playing these teams because people are looking up and down our schedule. And whereas we have a pretty good strength of record, they're looking at teams like Auburn, looking at teams like Mississippi State, and they're really just kind of getting dismissed, right? It's like, well, who did you play? Um, who did Indiana play? Okay, and so I'm not going to jump down that without understanding maybe a little bit more in depth about who Indiana played. But I'm going to give my prime example here. I've already given this a few times on the channel, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper this time. When we played Notre Dame, they were number 8 at the time. I'm not sure what they're ranked now. I think they are right inside the playoffs at this point, but at some point they were down the line a little bit further. The question ends up becoming, when we played Notre Dame, did they give us a top 10 shot? Or was it a non ranked shot? Okay. You can go and you can look at Arkansas play Notre Dame and then us play Arkansas. If you come to the same conclusion that that's the same team playing, it's just dead wrong. Just it is. It's just dead wrong. It may say Arkansas. It may be Taylor Green at the helm, and it may be Petrino. Actually, it probably wasn't Petrino against Notre Dame. I'm pretty sure it was Pittman. But either way, it wasn't the same team. And that's the point I'm making. It's all about what team did you play when you played them. When we played Notre Dame, we played a top 10 team. That was a top 10 matchup, not because of the number next to their name. Okay, here we are. We've been talking about this, right? We understand this now. Us as Aggies, you've listened to this. You've heard me talk about Elko. The number means jack. It doesn't mean anything. Okay. Everybody else needs to understand that too, and I think that's what they're missing. The number next to Notre Dame's name meant nothing. It's how did that team actually play? If you grade them out, this is why PFF actually does really well. They give you a game to game evaluation of how the team actually performed. They performed like a top 10 team that game. I don't care what they ended up being ranked any other time during the year, right? It's bias. Some people think, well, you lose the game early in the year, it doesn't matter as much when you lose it at the end. There is some truth to that because that tends to indicate what way you're trending. But at the same time, you can't just look back and say, oh, well, such and such team lost, and so that now that win doesn't look as good as it did back then. Oh, really? Well, what was that team like when we played them? And for Notre Dame, when we played them, top 10 teams. Now let me go through the list though. Let me make the case for the other teams because you've heard about Notre Dame from me quite a bit. What about Auburn? Remember, Auburn had just played OU the week before, right? They got jobbed. They came in pissed off to play us. They were they were mad. And you could see it in the field. You could see how physical they played. Yes, their offense is not good. It reared its head as well. Jackson Arnold's not a good quarterback at this point. And we took advantage of that. If we had lost that game, it would have been our team beating our team. I use that very, very carefully because I'm about to get into this how we beat our how we beat our own self. Okay, there's a distinction I'm going to make here that's very important. in my mind. But we had so many penalties that game, it would have been our team beating our own team in that particular game, not them beating us. But you look at how they played, and they played motivated. They played hard. They gave us every bit of whatever they had left in the tank. Right? Florida backs up against the wall. It was a referendum on Napier. Was it going to be a good one or a bad one? Well, it turned out to be a bad one, but you can better believe that they gave us the shot, the best shot they possibly could versus Mississippi State. They came in high as a kite. They had beaten Big 12 Arizona earlier in the year. Then they reeled off four more wins. Then we'll go toe to toe with Tennessee. Uh, and this is all after they had a horrible 2-10 season last year, right? This is why they're coming in high as a kite. They've moved the needle significantly. Of course, then they go to Florida, and they get edged. Then they let Texas come back though. They're just, I mean, they're absolutely mollywhopping Texas and let them come back. So you got a little more context there. Um, yeah, they probably were down a little bit on the Florida game, but to be able to hang with Texas and do that, hey, something about this team is there. It's probably one of the better 5-4 teams that there is. They should be 6-3 versus Arky versus Arkansas. They pulled no punches. They never do. Um, they got the interim bump, don't you think? If you, again, I already told you about this. If you think they played the same way against us as they did against Notre Dame, you watched the wrong game. There were no stops in that team. Okay, Trino wanted to prove himself. The team is always tough. And then we go to Death Valley. Okay, and let me rewind all the way back real quick and one more time to remind everybody what was the media saying when we played Notre Dame? It was if they don't win that game, playoff hopes are gone. Right? What was being said going into the LSU game? Right? Wasn't it basically the same thing? You lose this game, you're done. You lose this game, Brian Kelly's done. College football playoff is done. Yes. Plus, you're going in Death Valley. No one wins there, right? Except for Alabama. And who did? Who went in there? Every team has given us their best shot, right? The first 8 games were about who this team is. The next 4 games are going to be about what this team is made of. Okay? I want to put that out there again. So when we go to Missouri, what's at stake? Already told you, right? This is it. If they want to be in the playoffs, they have to win this game. They know it. Every team after this, and we'll see, they would have to win this game, and then it'll go to the next. And they may have the same situation going on. They'll have to give the next team their best shot. But right now, A&M's going to get the best one that they've got. And that's fine. That's fine because I believe that this team is made of something special. All right? Brass looks nice. Iron is strong. Okay? Iron's much stronger than brass. And it looks great. 8-0 looks great. Being talked about sounds great. Want to really know what this team's made of. That comes by understanding what is needed from this team. Whenever I was talking about beating their self, this is what the actual war is that's going on. It's within. It's within each player. It's beating their self. If they want to win games, they want to win them all, they want to win them consistently, they have to beat their self. Every game, every practice, going all the way back till probably 2 springs ago, it's been about letting go of their self and embracing um, the grind and the process and what they could be. You, we are constantly battling against what we could be by allowing ourselves to settle for our lesser selves. We want to be our best. We have to beat the self, get rid of the ego, stop trying to do what we want to do and do what is best. That is what I mean by that. So if we want to beat Missouri and the rest of these teams out, we have to beat ourselves first. This is not going to happen this week, anyways. It's already happened. The culture of this team is already made. And I believe in that culture wholeheartedly. And that's why I do partially feel some type of way about this situation. So that's the Invigorated podcast for tonight, y'all. That's it. That's why you're getting this angst. But I kind of like it, don't you? I kind of like it. Um, the bottom line for me is this: Elko's team knows the stakes. Okay. This team has embraced the journey and they embraced it long ago. They're after something bigger. I have the Aggies winning 27-17. If they don't, well, just the win. I'm not trying to promise any score predictions, but I think about a 10 point differential is about right. But I'll only do this for the wins. If they don't win, I'll put clown face on. I'll do it. I gotta have to shave this anyways if we lose. Many people think that there's a loss coming no matter what, but they have not listened to these other things that I've spoken to you about tonight. I don't have heard anybody mention these things. And that's why I feel that way. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. But I truly believe the storm is coming and Columbus, Missouri is right in the path. See y'all soon.